I'm Steve Walker-Duncan, and I'm on a quest. As a professional chef for 25 years and an instructor at the Comox College Culinary Arts program, I truly believe we have some of the best food in the world right here on the West Coast. Join me in discovering some of these culinary treasures.
Due to the intense pressure and stress that I'm subject to bring you, the viewer, flavors of the West Coast, I've decided to come to the O Spa at the Old House Inn in the Comox Valley to have a little chocolate smeared all over my face, which is a nice change from eating it.
Oh, that feels so nice. And it smells chocolatey too. Mm-hmm. Is it edible?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Apart from chocolate, what else? What other goodies do you put on people's skin?
We have a lemon cleanser for gentle exfoliation, a strawberry rhubarb mask that's unreal, smells so good.
Oh, I bet it does. You go around smelling like pie.
It's so good.
Oh, I can feel the chocolatey goodness.
Steve, we gotta get a move on.
I was just starting to enjoy that. Now I know what a chocolate truffle feels like. I guess there's a show to make. Better get on with it. We're in Courtenay, the largest town in the beautiful Comox Valley and one of the fastest growing urban communities in Canada. Though its colourful main street still feels like a small town with loads of small and interesting stores. The town is named after the Courtenay River, which separates it from its sister city Comox, with its busy harbour. The Comox Valley area is a popular tourist destination with its diverse natural beauty and fantastic recreational opportunities. But it's also a great area for local food, which is what I'm here to explore. Back at the hotel, I'm off to the historic Old House restaurant to meet Jeff Lucas, one of the owners.
Well, it was originally built as a private residence back in 1938 by the Kirk family.
Right.
They lived in it for about 40 years before they sold it to a young enterprising man who decided that he wanted to turn it into a restaurant.
Okay.
And it's been a restaurant since 1972 and continues to flourish. It is an icon in the Comox Valley.
The superb garden is just starting to produce food for the restaurant. I was shown round by an old friend, Chance Wilkie, who's the new chef.
We've got apples and pears, and we've got all the herbs and flowers. We've got thyme, we've got this nice sage and fennel. And look at this, you know, we've been clipping them off pretty much every day since I've been coming in. And we used to have lavender here, but I've pretty much taken most of it away. And then we've got some rosemary and some lemon balm in here.
Beautiful, beautiful. To have these fresh herbs right at your doorstep and ready to use is so great to work with from a culinary point of view, isn't it?
Chef Chance has put a lot of effort into making sure that we've got as much local things as we can.
Yeah.
If it's not something that comes directly from our garden, that it's from somewhere nearby, because we've got some great producers here in the valley.
Right.
And it's unique to say, okay, if it's coming right from our backyard, we've got a big backyard here in the Comox Valley, and we take advantage of it.
One of the best known of the Comox Valley farms has to be Beaver Meadows Farms, home of award-winning natural pastures cheese. I'm at the farm with Edgar Smith, but we're hunting for something much more exotic. Wasabi!
Wow, this is really tucked away, isn't it?
Yeah, so there you see the wasabi. It grows under the understory of the forest.
Yeah, it's almost swampy kind of conditions.
Yeah, you can see the soil's drying out, but it's usually a very black, peaty sort of a soil.
It's beautiful looking soil, isn't it?
Great soil. Just grows wild, like you'd think it would grown here forever. It's adapted to this environment.
Okay.
And it...
but it was introduced here by...
It came here about
interesting story?
20 years ago. I practiced Tai Chi for about 30 years, and my Tai Chi master was from Taiwan, and they grow it in the mountains in Taiwan. So we brought some here to see if it would grow. And so we tried all different environments. And this is the environment that we found that it seems to adapt in, and it does well. The only thing that seems to have it is the odd hole. Slugs will eat it, but they don't damage it. I guess they get a little bit of wasabi and it, you know, it's too strong for them and off they go. But it, you can see it has a rhizome. We'll pull one up here. It takes about 3 years to grow mature. This is about a half-age wasabi plant.
Okay.
And it has its roots, and then it has the rhizome and the stem and the leaves. And the rhizome is what normally you'll see where somebody has made a green paste or with sushi or sashimi or something like that. But we actually use the whole plant. We use the roots and the stems and the rhizomes and grind it up, and we make our wasabi cheese.
The farm also produces cranberries and organic free-range beef. But for me, the highlight has to be the cheese. Luckily, Edgar has some samples for me to try.
This is our latest gold medal winning cheese for Canada. It's a smoked boerenkaas.
Oh, and having lived in Holland, I love the boerenkaas. It's an aged, isn't it?
And in the middle here we have our Comox Camembert, which is another Canadian champion.
This is your real award winner, isn't it?
And that's the one that also won the World Cheese Championship.
Okay.
And all of these here have won Canadian champions. And I know when the judges gave us our first Canadian championship for Camembert, they said this is the flavor that they recognized in somewhere like in Normandy 30, 40 years ago on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, before industrial rain got into the Europe and the soils didn't have that pristine flavor anymore.
Right.
This is the beginning of it. This grass and the special flavor from the soils here, right along the coast of the Comox Valley, have brought that flavor, which people now recognize the world over as Comox Brie or Comox Camembert.
Edgar, along with his brothers, are the third generation of Smiths who have farmed beaver meadows. It's a great example of sustainability and the world-beating quality that we can enjoy from local food producers. Time to move from land to sea on my local food quest. I've been invited out by Pentlatch Seafoods to sample some of their oysters. Pentlatch Seafoods is owned and operated by the Comox First Nation. Comox means land of plenty in their traditional language, and Pentlatch is committed to sustainable shellfish culture in their pristine local waters.
This part of Vancouver Island, about 50% of the shellfish aquaculture industry takes place here in Bain Sound. It's about $30 million industry.
Wow. And that's what all these floats are? All these floats are?
These floats here are cargo nets. Like we'll come in when the tide's out. We'll harvest the oysters and clams, put the bags of Vexar into cargo nets, and then when the tide comes in, as it is right now, we'll come in with a boat, pick the cargo nets up out of the water and put them into totes.
What's the depth of water below us at the moment? Is it?
Right now we're probably at about a 14-foot tide height, and we're probably looking at about 8 feet of water, 9 feet of water below us right now.
So are you seeding these, or are these naturally occurring oysters?
We're aquaculture, so we do seed, and we'll probably spread about 3 million oyster seed, 3/4-inch oyster seed annually, and about 8 to 10 million manila clam seeds annually.
Wow. That's a lot of oysters and clams.
A lot of oysters and clams.
Now, what's the life cycle? How long does it take for them to reach maturity?
Yeah, a lot of it's based upon Mother Nature and what's going on in the water conditions. So on average, our intertidal beach oysters, probably about 2 to 3 years to grow up. One of the things that we'll find in comparison to a beach oyster to a rafting oyster is a rafting oyster is in the water 24/7, so they're feeding continuously 24/7.
Right.
For a beach oyster or manila clams, when the tide goes out, they don't feed. When the tide does come in, they feed.
Right. And that's part of what makes them different, isn't it? Because the float oysters, they don't work really hard, do they? They just kind of sit there and they open their shells and they let the water come through and they feed, whereas the beach oysters, they're open, they're closed, they're open, they're closed.
That abductor muscle in the beach oyster is a lot stronger because they are continuously working.
Yeah.
And
the shells are
a lot
harder
stronger
as well,
and harder as well.
Yeah.
Tom and Richard hauled up some oysters for us to sample. This is a real treat. Oysters just don't come any fresher or sweeter than this.
Cheers
Cheers.
to oysters. Those are sweet oysters.
Much of the best of the Comox Valley comes together at Locals Restaurant in Courtenay, where I'm meeting an old friend, Chef Ronald St. Pierre, who is going to prepare a dish using those beautiful Pentlatch Comogwe oysters.
Ronald, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Steve.
I am so looking forward to what you're going to do with us today, because you are renowned as being a supporter of local produce and food products, aren't you?
Well, I like to, and I really like to support the local scene because, for one thing, the food and the produce that I am able to get from the Comox Valley is just amazing. So the quality is really, really nice. You have to realize that every time that you support somebody locally, you know, 90% of the money you spend stays in the
community,
area,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it makes good financial sense as well as good culinary sense.
Yeah.
What are we doing today? I noticed we've got some of these beautiful oysters.
We have a beautiful oyster here from Comogwe. Yeah, I'm just going to cook the outside, and it keeps the inside nice and still very flavorful.
Right. So if somebody doesn't have a torch, you could, of course, do this under your grill at home?
You can cook them on the barbecue, on a really hot barbecue, or you could do it under the broiler in the oven.
Yeah. So just enough. You're just giving these enough to just put a little bit of color on the outside?
Exactly. But then the center still will be nice and fresh. I've cooked some sushi rice flavored with a little bit of homemade marin, which is rice vinegar, sugar and salt. A little bit of microgreen. We'll add our oyster. So I'm using a little soya sauce. In this case, it's Indonesian soya sauce,
okay,
which is ketchup mayonnaise, which has a slightly more sweet flavor.
Yep.
And this is wasabi aioli. So using the wasabi from Beaver Meadow Farm, Natural Spring, and a few drops of chili oil.
Just for a little bit of heat?
Just a little bit of spice, little bit of chopped scallion. And for garnishing, I've got some fresh wasabi root here. If you have a fresh wasabi root like that, there's nothing like the dry powder you can get at the store.
Right. So it's a little milder, isn't it?
Oh, this stuff is a beautiful wasabi flavor. And then some pickled ginger that I also add for flavor. So there, simple.
Do you mind if I use my fingers? I think this looks like a finger job because it's just like a little sushi. And that rice just holds together nicely. Look at that. That's just such a beautiful little dish. Oh, it's beautiful. The oyster is so flavorful. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Mm. The most important thing working in the kitchen is having good knives, and knives that you're comfortable with. They have to be comfortable in your hand or else they're not going to work effectively for you. Here we have a range of standard kitchen knives. Our regular cook's knife, multi-purpose for a whole range of different jobs. Our serrated knife for breads and other soft items. Things like tomatoes work really well for bread, that too. Carving knife for large pieces of meat such as ham, turkey, roast beef. Paring knife for small work and peeling. And our vegetable knife for doing a whole range of vegetables. And on top of that, of course, our steel, which we have on hand at all times to keep them sharp when we need them. After all that beautiful sunshine in Courtenay Comox, we decided to bring our kitchen outdoors this week, and we're on the deck with a beautiful new barbecue, and I'm delighted to welcome Elizabeth May.
Thank you.
Green Party of Canada leader and the first ever Green Party MP in the Commonwealth, isn't it?
Well, no. The Commonwealth, we had Carolyn Lucas as leader of the Greens in the UK.
Right.
And she won last year her seat in Brighton Pavilion, but I am the first elected federal Green in Canada or the US.
That's fabulous.
It is pretty fabulous.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Saanich Gulf Islands.
The thin end of the wedge. This is the start, isn't it?
That's right, it is. Of course, you know that my real ambition is to have my own cooking show.
We can help you with that.
Yeah.
We can go. I'll tell you what, I'll be Prime Minister, you have a cooking show, and we're good to go.
Well, you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. That's
what we're doing today. We went and we harvested some of these fabulous Comogwe oysters. And we're going to cook these really, really simply on the barbecue today. What I've got is I've got a cedar plank. Okay. Now you have to soak these, so soak them in cold water for a couple of hours first, because otherwise they just catch on fire and you've got
good point.
You've now got smoked oysters, and that's not what we're going for here. I've got some sea asparagus,
Yes.
which is beautiful. It's got that little bit of saltiness, that brininess to it. I've just blanched it off real quickly in some boiling water, about 30 seconds, and just put it on the cedar plank. And what this is going to do is kind of hold the oysters from flopping around, and then we're going to use it at the end as a little bit of garnish on the top. So we'll get the cedar flavor through, but the oysters will all be. So what we've got here is we've got these beautiful oysters, and all I've done is I've just scrubbed them clean, and all we're going to do is just put them. Now you're looking for that deep cup. You see how the bottom has a deeper cup, the top is kind of flat? You want that cup down, because that's where all the oyster liquor is. So we're just going to, if you want to grab a couple of those, and we're just going to sort of sit them on there and press them down into the sea asparagus.
And we're not taking the lid off of them? We're not shucking them first?
These are going to open on their own.
Of course
it's just
they
like
are.
magic.
Cute.
Now I've got my barbecue as high as it'll go. Okay, full steam. And let me just take this whole thing, drop it right on there.
Easy.
Close the lid. Now you don't even have to do this. You can put them directly onto the grill of the barbecue. In fact, I tell you what, we've got a couple extras here, and we just put them straight on, and the grills of the barbecue just kind of hold them steady. That's perfect. We can just leave those in there. Now the ones on the plank will take a little bit longer because the heat has to come up through the plank.
Right.
Those first ones, a minute and a half is all they'll take, and the lids will just pop right open.
Saves you all that hard work.
That's right, and you don't get the shell. You don't get the scraps of shell in there. So how is Ottawa?
Ottawa has been very, very interesting. Of course, I had the almost a month of June, where the House was in session, and we had, boy, it was a very tumultuous session. I ended up having a number of times where I was the only one on various issues. But of course, everything that happened in the House of Commons in June is overshadowed by losing Jack Layton. So,
from an outsider's perspective, Jack Layton seemed to be quite well liked, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was a nice man.
Yes, he was well liked, and people would be surprised, for instance, that he worked a lot with Stephen Harper. So the Prime Minister's response, which I thought was very gracious, to say this should be a state funeral. That might have surprised some people. It didn't surprise me at all. I knew there was a real connection there.
You can hear a little sizzle going on here. So we have a peek in here and see what's going on.
Opening up yet.
Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab my tongs. So you can see the liquid just bubbling out of the side here.
Yeah, that would be one of the ones that's going to be first because it wasn't on a plank.
That's right. Now,
so you do have to do a little bit of
shuffling. You do have to just get the tip of your blade in there. There we go. But because they're cooked slightly, they open a lot more easy. And there we go. Look at that.
Look at that.
Would you like to try
sure.
a freshly barbecued oyster?
Oh my gosh, what a
in
treat.
all its glory. No seasoning, just the natural sea salt in there.
Oh,
just
the broth is delicious.
You really can't beat that. Same sort of principle. What's happened is these are starting to cook a little bit. That abductor muscle is starting to contract, and it's starting to release. That little connector on the back there will open up nice and easily. So all I'm going to do is...
I mean, they're so good just like this.
Yep, they are. They're fabulous.
But obviously, you have much more in store
We're
for them.
going to do something a little bit special with these. So all I'm going to do is just pop the tops off of these. And these ones are a little bit bigger, so they're easier to work with. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, Elizabeth, we've got a little bit of grated ginger here.
Okay.
If you want to just put a tiny, tiny little pinch on each one.
Okay.
Put a little bit of natural pastures wasabi cheese on this.
But has anyone in the world ever made wasabi cheese before?
Do you know? I don't
pastures?
know. I don't know if I've never come across it on my travels. So I'm going to follow you on just a tiny little bit. We've got some sea salt.
I just love ginger.
And we're just going to put a couple of grains of salt on each one. And then there's our wasabi cheese.
Amazing.
Already grated. You're more than welcome to.
Thanks.
It's very mild. It's not like the sushi wasabi which blows your head off. Very mild. And then we're just going to take, literally, again, just a tiny, we don't want too much. We don't want to overwhelm the oyster.
So this is almost like a variation on Oysters Rockefeller in some ways?
This is exactly where the inspiration came from. I was really sort of thinking along Oyster Rockefeller when I came up with it.
But of course, Oyster Rockefeller is a pale comparison to oysters a la Steve.
Oyster Rockefeller may hold their own in New York or some of the big cities, but when you're on the West Coast, you really
with wasabi cheese,
have to utilize what we have here, don't you?
Yeah.
So there's our cheese going on. And again, you notice I've just put literally 2 or 3 strands on each one. And then that will go back in the barbecue for 2 minutes, just enough to melt that cheese. There we go. So I know you've been asked this before, but how can you make a difference as one person in an assembly of 300 and how many?
308.
308.
I shall tell you the funniest thing. My seat number, I'm in the far back corner of the House of Commons.
Yeah.
And there are 308 MPs. So guess what seat number I have?
You must have 308.
I have 309.
So is there a ghost seat somewhere?
Well, I think it's sort of like platform 9 3/4. I think they've given me a spot that allows me to do more than
just for you.
And what I've found so far is that I can make a huge difference. On a lot of motions in June, what they wanted was unanimous consent. I gave my consent if I thought it was appropriate, but where I thought bills needed to be studied before they were passed, kind of basic notion as far as I'm concerned, I would object.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't move ahead.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to stand up and speak every day on local petitions or national petition issues that come to me. I'm allowed to stand anytime on a point of order, and if it's and I raise real points of order. I don't use it as just an excuse to stand up. But so far, and of course, the argument for greater civility and decorum in the House is one where I really think I'm already making a difference. One of my top goals as someone in politics who's new to politics is to change political culture.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for that.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a great opportunity. Speaking of opportunities.
Oh, good
look
segue there.
Look at that. So we
oh
do.
My word.
Now I'm just going to grab
That's
a
just beautiful to look at too.
And of course,
what presentation?
The plank also protects the oyster so that they don't get too hot. You can see they're still moist, they're still juicy. So one last thing to do.
Okay.
We just want to grab a little bit of sea asparagus. And just put a little bit on each one.
The sea asparagus that was under the oysters has also stayed moist.
Fine, and there we go. There is our Courtney Comox Como Guai oysters.
Gorgeous.
With sea asparagus and natural pastures wasabi cheese. It's that time again. Mr. Rod Phillips from Liquor Plus. We've got sea asparagus, wasabi cheese. What can you do for oysters and all those strong flavors?
I love oysters. I'm a big fan of oysters.
As a wine guy, though, it's kind of natural. You kind of have to, don't you?
You do, because that's what we do on Friday afternoons: is sit around and drink wine and have oysters. So you need something that's going to pick up the weight.
Yep.
You need something that's going to pick up the briny quality. Yep. And if you're barbecuing them, there's add a little bit of sweetness to it. So I've selected 3 wines here that will work with each of those kind of components. The first of which is the Stoneleigh Sauvignon Blanc. Now, there's a great deal of...
And of course, this has come all the way from the southern
New
hemisphere,
Zealand, and if New Zealand is another great place for oysters, as you may know. This has got lots of minerality, citrus, that is so fresh in the palate.
Beautiful.
That is so ripe. A similar kind of style is the Cedar Creek Pinot Gris. Now, this is a little bit older. This is the 09 Pinot Gris, a little bit older. So it's about a year older, but I think it's had enough time to really come to grips with its natural acidity.
Again, a beautiful, beautiful, balanced, rounded flavor.
Yeah, I'm sure you and Elizabeth would have enjoyed this on the patio. And if you called, I would have been over there.
Next time.
Okay, all right. No worries.
Now here we go with, we're going red wine here. Oysters.
Yeah.
People would not normally put red with oysters.
Now here's the thing about barbecue. Barbecue, the temperature of a barbecue generally has a tendency to caramelize some of the sugars that are in there. So I went on a limb, and I thought Pinot Noir. When I've barbecued oysters in the past, I've gone with a Pinot Noir, and it's been fabulous. Again, you need that silky texture is really going to work well with the oyster. Cassini is probably one of the best Pinots on the market, especially when you look at it, it's under $20.
Right. And this is a local one. Again, beautiful, beautiful, nice, crisp. For a red wine, it's got that crispness to it, and it's light, but it's got body and flavor.
It's still caressing the back of your palate. It is sensuous.
I feel caressed. I do feel caressed.
That's what I was going for.
Rod,
brilliant.
Thanks, my friend.
No worries.
We'll see you next time.